Welcome to the Wild Pitch Podcast.
All right, welcome everybody. We have another special edition of the Wild Pitch Podcast. A few weeks ago, we spoke about the Major League Draft and how the coronavirus had affected it. And, what we had thought back then kind of has come to fruition, whereas they're only going to do 5 rounds. And I think now, though, that it's official, we have a couple questions. And with us today, number one, we're bringing in Mike Gaffney, who is our top podcast episode so far. So he brought so much attention to us, and he's got the most listeners that he's going to be a recurring guest host because he brings some cachet and he's a natural at that.
And if you're watching on YouTube, he brings up the attractiveness level up about 10 decibels.
Yeah, he is. He's handsome. So we also have Craig Cooper. We know Craig since he's a little kid. And interestingly enough, he was drafted once but had an opportunity the year before, and he's in that round 5 to 10 round window that we're going to talk about pretty heavily tonight. Craig ended up being a 7th round pick with the Padres. Really good athlete, Notre Dame. We'll get into that as we go on. And we also have Mike Spiciarich. Now, Mike, we know too, since he's a little kid, that we just found out. And he's an MLB insider. He comes from some different angles. He's got some info he's in the know, so to speak, on some things. So we'll hear from him as well. But I think the biggest thing, guys, is I want to really get into rounds 6 through 10. And I'm going to start it this way, just so if you guys haven't seen, everybody that's been drafted – every single player that appeared in the major leagues last year brings a number to like 1,400. Anyone that came in by way of the draft, 46% of those guys were taken the 6th round on. So 46, that's like 483 players that appeared in a major league game were drafted after the 5th round. So now what's happening is, as you guys know, is if you're drafted after the 6th round with a 6th and on, the most you can sign for is $20,000. And I think the slot for that is, well over $200,000. And I think each team's going to go on and save $1 million, basically. For $1 million, that's why they're doing this, each team, which is kind of ridiculous. But, this is what I wanted to get into. If I'm a 6th round pick, I'm obviously a really, really good player. That means every team wants me. Craig, you probably had a report on you. Probably 30 teams were potentially going to draft you.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of interviews and stuff going in. I was on a pretty high-profile team. I had a lot of guys that were 2nd, 3rd, 4th round picks. So there were a lot of scouts coming to see us, and we were able to have a lot of one-on-one with, different area guys. And, I think everyone in the region at least knew who everyone on the team was.
Right. I know, like Gaff, like when you and I were drafted, we knew I know for me, I probably had 7 teams that I felt like were interested, and there's probably 22 that didn't even know me or wasn't on their radar. How about yourself?
Actually, it's actually pretty funny. My junior year when I got drafted, I filled out every organization's questionnaire. Back then they had the questionnaire you filled out and like the packet.
Oh, so that's big. Yeah.
And the last one I got was the Marlins, and I was such a spoiled brat. I was like, I'm so sick of doing this. I'm not filling this one out. And they're the team that drafted me. But to your point, Jimmy, you're saying the 46% of big leaguers were drafted after the 5th round, right?
That's of the guys that weren't like free agents from, Dominican.
Oh, of the guys who were drafted, yeah.
But 483 guys.
Yeah, and there's now we talk, and I want to know, is there a cap to how many guys can organizations sign for that $20,000? Like, are there restrictions like that?
Mike,
I think it's unlimited. I think it's unlimited after the draft is over. You can sign as many guys as you want for $20,000.
Mm-hmm.
But
wow, so like there's so much more strategy now to that whole.
Well,
process.
What is the strategy though? Like for Coop, right? Coop went in the 7th round, so he would be in this spot where 30 teams are coming at him. Craig, how would you pick a team?
I think my first thought would be where's a fit for me, position-wise. Where am I blocked?
But how do you know?
You don't really know. I was drafted by the Padres, and I was a first baseman at the time, and they had a young Adrian Gonzalez playing first base, who was, one of the top 5 first basemen in baseball. He was going nowhere, so there was essentially like a roadblock. I would try not to choose that organization, at least that kind of logic. I would prefer to be on the East Coast, probably. I'm from New York. I'd like to play, for the Yankees, Mets, all have farm teams in the area. Those are things that I would consider.
It's almost like being recruited again, right?
Yeah.
Like going through the whole recruiting process, I guess. If you have multiple suitors, if you have multiple organizations reaching out to you, now you have to start weighing, some of those, ancillary thought processes, right? I mean, so it's interesting when you sit back and you think about, when you were in high school and how everybody kind of, wooed over you and try to recruit. Now it's like the same, it's almost the same position again.
Right, but how long is the team going to wait? 5 minutes? 10 minutes?
That's a great question.
I mean, they got.
I think they're going to. I think they're going to have their board all lined up for like every certain situation, and they're going to have made those
phone calls already, right? They're going to say, "Hey, we're thinking about signing you. Are you on board?"
Yeah, like if you don't get plucked today, I mean, we're ready to offer you, a minute after the draft. Will you take it? I think that's how, and Mike, you might speak to that a little more on how organizations are going to handle that.
No, I think that's right, and that's kind of similar thing happens in the NFL draft, right? Come the 6th, 7th round, there are a couple guys that will still get drafted, but every team is calling potential non-drafted free agents to give them their pitch in the middle of day 3 of the NFL draft. It wasn't such a big deal with the Major League Baseball draft since there are 40 rounds. It's not like undrafted guys are in that high of demand. But when you cut it down to 5 rounds, those phone calls are going to be happening at the end of the 2nd round, because there'll only be another 90 guys that get taken. So you're going to see a lot of activity on day 2 of the draft.
Now that's a good point. They said the New York Giants this year, their last pick had deals in place for $250,000 to sign with other teams, and then they draft him, and he lost like over $100,000.
Oh my God!
Yeah, getting drafted.
They were telling a similar story with the Saints guy. The Saints traded back into the 7th round to draft a guy who had a deal with another team. I think it was the Panthers. He had a deal worked out, and the Saints drafted him, so he couldn't sign that deal. But there's a little gamesmanship.
Yeah. That's a broken system right there. That doesn't make sense. Now, how about this? Do you think guys are going to be like Scott Boras is going to say, "Hey, don't sign, don't go to school. We're going to go to an independent league and we're going to sign for $300,000 in a couple."
100%.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. They're talking about affiliated baseball being cut down, but I think the independent market is just going to blow up a little bit now because of the draft situation and the affiliated leagues going down, and not just because of the volume of teams, but now the negotiating power that's there. I mean, you might make a case. I remember when my father was playing in the 70s, they had those co-op teams where like you had half the team was affiliated guys, the other half was independent. I'm not saying it's going to be like that, but the quality of play on some of those independent teams are going to be really good. And now you're going to probably see independent teams putting a lot more money. There's going to be, the Long Island Ducks are going to be able to buy more players than other teams.
I think even in the last 2 years, you've seen a lot of independent league teams have more major league talent. AA, AAA guys that have tenure will end up there. And there's a lot more younger guys in AAA, where AAA used to be more guys bounce back down and they're older and have experience. But the Atlantic League, for example, has turned into a league where there's a lot of experience and like you're getting quality baseball. So it's not, out of the realm of possibility for someone to go there and really improve their game against, top quality pitching.
Well, how many opportunities are there going to be for that? That's the question. I mean, because some of these independent teams or leagues, they're up one year and then they're gone the next, I mean, obviously the Atlantic League has a little more staying power, but, but there's only but so many opportunities for each, each club. So it's gonna be a dogfight to get into there as well.
Yeah, I think the talent at the JUCO level, the talent at independent baseball, maybe some guys will go to Japan. There was a first-round pick last year that went to Japan. He signed a 6-year deal instead of signing with the Braves. So really, and Boris is great at just kind of creating leverage out of nothing. And if independent ball is an option, he can use that threat and keep guys there another year. Maybe the draft goes back to 10 or 12 rounds and next year, and there's more money to be spent. But independent ball and JUCO ball will be great this year.
Yeah, that is that one kid, he was really young, right? He signed a 6-year deal. He got
I think he was an 18-year-old Carter Stewart. Was I think he was the 8th overall pick, and he had a problem with his physical, so he went to Japan and signed a 6-year, $10 million deal, $8 million, whatever it was. But he made the most of the situation.
Here's a question I have, because as you're talking about what this kid made overseas or internationally, but coming back home and the draft and we've known as of late, the slot money in those first 5 rounds has been astronomical. Does that get lessened now? Because it's almost like, hey, no. So
they said they're freezing the slot money for the next 2 years.
Yeah.
But it's not going to – it usually goes up like 3 to 5%. I think Mike would know, but it goes up a small percentage every year, but they're going to freeze it for the next 2 and then revisit, I think.
Right, exactly. It's going to be frozen in place, and it was supposed to go up with inflation, small percentages, but I don't think it will this year.
And like the first round pick, if he gets $8 million, I know he's only getting $100,000 off the bat, and then 6 months later he'll get another portion, and then like the following year he gets another portion. Like I don't understand how a major league team, like even $8 million, that's not making or break them. That they have to hold on to this money, or they can only give you $100,000. It's just it's crazy. I mean, the whole draft is messed up. It's too much money to give a kid that's not going to make it anyway.
Amen.
And that's always a good thing. So
I think Chris and I have different philosophies on this, but for the signing bonus, you can get $100,000 this year, and then you wait a full year to get 50% of the rest, and then another year to get the rest of the money. So you're looking at 2 full years before you get paid out your whole bonus. And like you said, teams all budget for the draft. The draft is actually a great way to save money long term. The baseball system in general, with arbitration and keeping guys in the minors for extra for longer than they need to be, is all these things are skewed in the owner's favor. So there are some guys that don't make it, but generally the teams are pretty decent at drafting good talent at the top of the draft. And I think this year in particular, you'll see there won't be as many games. You know how some teams can take guys and sign them to underslot deals and then sign, a better guy, let's say in the 2nd or 3rd round. I think this year's board will probably be closer to what people assess the talent level to be. So the best guy should go 1 overall. The second best guy should go 2nd, and so on. Instead of like
mess around.
Take the 5th best guy first, so you save a little money. That's just my guess, but we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah.
So do you think the signability and like, a lot of guys don't get picked because of signability. Do you think that's out the window now with the first 5, with only 5 rounds?
My guess is that there's so much uncertainty that we don't know if next year is going to be any better. So
right.
You can take a chance. You can go to JUCO. You can go to, over independent ball. You can go anywhere else. But is next year going to be better? Is this whole season going to be canceled if somebody else tests positive? So you really don't know that next year is going to be better. So I think my guess is that signability won't be an issue this year for guys. If you're going in the top 5 rounds anyway, you're going to get paid pretty decent money. And I don't think that guys, that will be an issue.
That's a great point. And I think that we can go back to Coop on this, because Coop, although you were drafted your senior year in the 7th round, your junior year, you were approached by several organizations to ask if you would be willing to sign for a certain amount of money in the 5th through 7th rounds, right? So if you were back, put yourself in this situation, right? You're a junior again, and here we have this conflicted draft process. Do you now take a different approach if you were to kind of do it all over?
Well, this year's even different than what I went through, because the seniors actually had the option to go back to school. So I was, your junior year, if I turned down my money or whatever, Then I go down, I'm a senior, and it's a senior sign option. But the juniors this year will have another year, and it's a little bit different. But, I mean, you have to take it kind of at face value, and the future is so uncertain that I think you take the option in getting in early.
Right. Take the opportunity, right?
5 guys or 6 guys in your class, right, instead of 40. So you're getting one-on-one time with the brass, with the minor league instructors, and those are the guys that are kind of guiding you through the system, and that are their word is what's gonna carry you. So that instructional time might be the best thing for you, like that one-on-one opportunity.
So, but now, like, Coop, when you were there, you were going to get slot money back then your junior year, right?
Yeah.
So they offer you slot money.
And this is one of my beefs with the whole process is you are negotiating, you play baseball your whole life, and, you hope to get drafted and play professionally. And the first negotiation is 25 seconds on a phone. Right. They call you, will you sign for X? Yes or no? Okay, you say no, because you have an advisor and you've gone over numbers and you know what the slot is. And they're going to come in maybe slightly below slot and say, will you sign for 20% discount? You say no, and that's it. That's the end of it. And then they're not going to draft you the rest of the draft. So that's not a fair system really for judging where your talent is and where you should be drafted if they're going to just make an eyeball judgment on you, on what you're going to sign for. Right.
But so what were you thinking back then? And we said this to Gaff too. He rolled the dice and he luckily got drafted again, even after an injury. But for you, how did you give up? You knew coming back as a senior, you're not getting any money really. Anything.
Yeah, you're getting the senior sign, whatever
Did you not know that, or would you? I don't care. I want my education.
No, it was a educated decision. I had gone through with my advisor, and we had a number in mind, and I was true to that number. It was below, and I didn't really know how to handle that call. The first one that came in, when they were like yes or no, I said no, and that's it. Like it's not a but. You can negotiate then. It's a yes or no. And I had no problem going back to school. In that 5 to 10 round range, I was willing to roll the dice. I didn't have a very good junior year. So I also thought that I can come back, play better, maybe get drafted higher. Although I don't think I could have played better my senior year, and I didn't get drafted higher. So
pull a Khalil Green, right? That's what you were looking for?
Khalil, he's a great example. He came back and had a monster senior year and was top 10 pick, worth $2 million right away. So
great hair too.
Yeah.
Good low key rapper too. He used to write rhymes.
Do you regret not going your junior year?
I don't regret it because my senior year, I had such a great time at school, like with the baseball team and everything. So I don't know if that was a unique experience for me. Like everything kind of came together and everything went well. The team was great. I played well, the team played well, we won championships. And then the next step was just to get drafted and play. Right. And I think I put a lot of pressure on myself my junior year. So when I came back my senior year, and I knew this was really my last team effort, I was able to relax and play and, actually perform better on the field.
So now though, you put yourself in the same shoes now, you have to sign for $20,000 as a junior, or risk coming back into a draft that's full with juniors, the sophomores from the year before, and the seniors coming back.
And the high school kids that went to JUCO.
I think that's going to be an issue for people. And it really is a tough call. But I think you got to take the money and run.
I mean, if you believe in yourself and you think maybe you can improve your draft stock, you're not going to get worse than 20,000. Well, maybe you get marginally worse than 20,000 next year. You might get down to 5 or 10 or whatever, maybe less. But I don't think it's bad to gamble on yourself if you think you have the ability. I mean, the odds are stacked against you. Coming back next year, the pool's going to be bigger. There's going to be less picks. It might be 10 rounds next year instead of 5, but there's no way to guarantee that you're going to move up your draft stock, even if you play very well.
That's a good point. That's a good point because if you're a 6th, 7th rounder now, you're going to be a 6th or 7th rounder next year or an 8th rounder, and you are going to get maybe 10,000. It's the same. But
Yeah, more or less.
I have read, and it's true. You may come back with a junior attached to your name, but they know you're also graduated. You don't have leverage. They might take those juniors and give them nothing next year. They go, "You're a senior, man. I don't care what it says in your coronavirus eligibility." Right? Why you're still 22 years old, which is not good. We know that. Right? My whole career I was told, "You're too old, you're too old." So
I think the one element of this whole situation though that probably gets lost in the factoring is that this is going to probably be a college heavy draft because there wasn't much opportunity to evaluate these high school kids, with the high school seasons being discontinued all over the country. And then next year, once things get to, I guess, ideally what's considered normal, status quo, now those high school kids are back in play. You understand? Or the new crop of high school kids are back in play. And then the ones who weren't the year before, they may have gone into JUCO or into indie ball like Mike Spitz, he notioned before. So now if you are that college senior, guess what? I don't know if your value is as good as it was the year before. You know what I mean? Or I don't know if you still hold that draft status because there's a much, much deeper pool than you probably, one's not aware of.
I think you got also
$20,000 here. $20,000 is, it's a little bit of money, but really, I don't think you're making a decision based on the money there. It's more about the opportunity. Are you gonna have a faster track to the big league by getting into an organization 1 year sooner? Because $20,000, that's 1 semester of college. A lot of these places, right?
Yep.
So it's not about the money; it's about the opportunity.
Yeah, and kind of starting your career. There's something to be said about that, to be in, now look, now the other thing is they're not going to be playing this year, but if you're taken in the top, if you're signed after the 5th round, maybe you get thrusted into that prospect, opportunity to kind of get developed, with the whatever limitations they have this year. But, it's certainly, I guess, it's not black and white, right? It's a pretty unique situation to say the least.
You also get your senior year paid for. If you, junior year you sign, they will pay for your year.
Is that right?
Yes. Most of the time you negotiate, especially with the $20,000 max. I think that they're going to have to throw in for the most part, as a junior, you got drafted and it was a year of school plus your bonus is what you agreed with. But even for guys that are sophomores now, redshirt sophomores, like that's a great situation for them. Like $20,000 are going to pay for 2 years of school. Nobody in college baseball is getting a full scholarship, right? You're getting a quarter, maybe a half at best. So, you're saving, $60,000, $70,000 depending on where you're at school, in addition to your $20,000 that you're getting in a bonus. So that's something to consider.
I think that's a good deal, but only, I think I heard a number that only like 25 or 30% of people actually take advantage of the going back to school program. So it sounds nice on paper, but it's an easy, it's a really easy thing for owners to give.
Yeah, it's a win for them.
Yeah, it sounds great for an organization, but nobody takes advantage of it.
I know I spoke to a team this year, and they said we have a player on our team that he's basically a junior, but injuries and now this. He's like still a sophomore, and the team's like, well, he's got 2 years of school. I go, no, he's graduating next year. I said, but if you really want to go there, he doesn't need the school just because he wants to play that bad. Like we're trying to like we all, well, not Coop, but like I would have said, I'll pay you. So we just wanted to let him know because they're like, oh, he's only a sophomore. They got to give 2 years of school. I said, no, you don't have to give him school. But anyway, what I was getting at, the team said, we have to give him the school. It's not an option. If you take a junior, anyone with school left, and you don't pay for it, you're like a laughing stock in the industry.
That's interesting.
Okay.
So, Gaff, what about you? You got drafted your junior year. Let's say you were in this predicament, right? Let's just say the draft, got pushed out to the same round that you got signed in, but you understood, there was some potential differences going into the next year. What would you have done? Would you have gambled, or would you?
No, I think if it was this situation, there wasn't any gamble. I think you got, and it's probably because I'm it's not as honest an answer because who knows what I would have said when I was 20. But I think now because, I have current players who were planning on possibly getting drafted this year. I've advised former players on the draft. But I mean, now that I'm older, and your first opportunity to play professional baseball, I think you should take it because there's so many other factors. And maybe because I got lucky. My senior year was gone because of an injury. I barely played my senior year, and I still got drafted. I was very lucky, but I saw how
delicate,
vulnerable that situation
Yes.
can be.
Yeah.
So now, I mean, especially now with this situation, jump on it, and it's so touchy. Just minor league baseball in general. We don't know what the landscape's going to look like in minor league baseball next year or the year after that. So get in now, get in as soon as you can, and try to start your career. Now, Craig went to Notre Dame, not to knock our alma mater, but we went to New York Tech. So like the Notre Dame education might be valued a little more. So, that there's a little more to that,
Come on.
I know it's crazy to say, but I think there's certain, if you're at a higher end academic institution, maybe you're thinking a little differently. Especially, and just to get, because I heard Craig say it, Mike, is that definite? So that if you're this year, you could sign a junior for $20,000 and pay for their school. That's still on the table.
Yes,
That's right. Yep.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I mean, I was unsure if that was actually, if that was allowed. I mean, yeah, if I'm a junior and I get $20,000 in school, I'm gone. If I'm any underclassman.
right. Hey, Mike S., I know we talked about it before, but let's say you're the Marlins, and I got the slots up here. These teams that don't have money, right? Are they going to take the 7th rounder that knows he's getting 20, give him, like I'll look at the Marlins here. Well, any team in the 5th round, you're giving a kid between 400 and 300,000. Are they going to take the 7th rounder and say, hey, I'll give you 60 or 100, and now there's going to be some 4th and 5th rounders that might slip if they start playing games again, or they might have to give a 3rd rounder part of his pool. It's just a mess. Do you think that could happen?
Sure. I mean, it depends on the team. Depends how creative they want to get. But generally, the best guys are going to get picked at the top. And
Yeah.
I don't know where the Marlins pick. I don't know where they pick next year. Something like, let's see,
Yeah, I don't know.
8th or something.
Probably, yeah.
Somewhere in there. So the 8th slot overall is going to be $4 million bonus. They can get a little creative and pay a guy $2 million and have some extra dollars to spend later on, but then they don't get the 8th best player in the draft, right? It's just the draft is a crapshoot anyway. So I see what you're saying, and I don't know how teams are going to play it, but I think there'll be less creativity this year than usual.
It's great, and it's going to
Marlins have the 3rd pick this year, so that's a big number.
The 3rd pick is 7.2.
Oh my God.
Just like I said, 3rd pick overall, $7.2 million.
That's a lot of money for a crappy.
That's a tough situation for that organization who's been floundering ever since Jeter took over, huh?
Yeah. So the 6th round, the first pick in the 6th round gets $300,000.
So I could see. Let me take back a little bit of what I said right there. $7.2 million, right? If you sign a guy for $4 million, you still have an extra $3 million or something to play with later in the draft. They may be a team that can create a 40-man draft just by a little bit of savings with their top pick, right? Instead of signing a guy for $20,000 for the 6th rounder for $20,000, they can offer 40, and everybody's going to take that.
No, but you can't after the 6th round. It has to be 20.
Max.
You can't pay anybody more.
Done.
Right, it's max 20. Yeah.
So the Marlins.
I'm going to look it up, but I think
they're going to take 3 second rounders.
No.
The Marlins are going to go a 2nd rounder. I'll give you 4. Then they're going to go in a 2nd rounder. They're going to take a 3rd rounder and give him half, and they're going to walk out of there spending no money, and have decent players, which is smart.
You can't afford to have a guy.
I'm not sure what.
Sign. Yeah, when you have 6 picks. you're not going to draft a Kyler Murray number 8 overall or whatever he went
Right.
on a whim. You're going to have guys that for sure are signing.
So does that mean? So are you saying, Coop, then that they're going to go to that next tier player and say, "Hey, will you sign for this much?"
There definitely is a possibility. I don't think guys are going to be willing to totally whiff on the first 5 rounds and just settle for 20,000. That's the alternative, right? If you're a third rounder, you're not going to really haggle as much as you used to. Your leverage is totally out the window because if you go down to past the 5th, you're done. So you kind of have
that happens, right? I mean, that happens frequently.
100%. I mean, but it used to be in the past, you could be a 20th rounder and sign for $1 million.
Right.
Now, if you go past 5, you're done.
Gaff, I mean, you get a small piece of it, not as much because, you're not North Carolina. North Carolina might have 25 recruits right now, which I know that's what they do. They'll have 25 kids coming in, and then they know, all right, I'm losing 3 seniors to the draft and 5 juniors to the draft. That's 8 guys. And then I got
high school kids that they're going to lose.
10 of my 25 are going in the first 4 rounds. Now, none of them are getting drafted. So Division II is looking pretty good.
That was when they came out with when the NCAA made the ruling on, we can expand the rosters for however many years. And a lot of those big schools were up in arms. And you guys probably saw the reports like, oh, this is ridiculous. Now I'm going to have 40-something guys in my dugout. How am I supposed to coach like this? Meanwhile, I'm looking around like, that's not, I've coached like that. It's not that bad. You can figure it out. You're coaching baseball. But a lot of it, they were saying that like logistically it will be hard. But we were saying the same thing. It's for that reason because they over recruit, and now they don't know what to do with all these bodies now and all these personalities and all these promises they probably made. That dynamic, and that's why you're seeing a lot of Power 5 schools saying we have no money for our seniors.
They just want them out.
They're trying to push them out the door. That portal's been radioactive lately, hasn't it?
You go on the transfer portal, you're seeing 10 Mississippi State guys. You're seeing, name a Power 5 school, and you're seeing a lot of.
Even Tech is throwing the dart at some of those guys to see if they want to take a trip up here.
But they're
what does that portal look like? I'm always curious about it.
800 guys so far.
Yep, it's loaded right now.
Yeah, and they tell this. Tommy Reardon tells me that after the draft is when it's going to explode.
Yeah. So what it is, Mike, it's on the NCAA site, and it's just one of our tabs. And you go on the transfer portal. You when you first go on, it's pretty overwhelming because there's every kid who plays every sport in the NCAA on it. So you have to like go through your search filter and go baseball and the years and things like that. But what we have 800 right now.
Yep.
At least something like that. Yeah.
At least. Yeah. And since March 13th, I would say there's probably at least 500 to 600 from just that time alone.
Yeah. So after
who has access to that? Is that a public
no
public thing there?
D1 Baseball puts it up though. That guy Kendall Rogers, he has it. If you subscribe to the one D1Baseball.com.
Does he just do Division I guys though?
I don't know. I don't think so because the number is always right. But
I never looked at his because I got that access. But it's wild. It's only gonna get worse too.
One of the things I wanted to ask Mike, and Mike Spitz, and we can get back to the college, I guess impact of this whole draft situation. But you made a comment in a discussion, Mike, that I found really, really interesting about how short-sighted it was by these organizations who think they're saving $1 million and what are they really losing, right? Besides, we talked about the impact of, 46% of MLB players who were drafted are from the 6th round and on, but you made you took a different spin on it. And I thought that was a fascinating thought process.
I think in general, the major league owners are extremely short-sighted, and this is a perfect example. If you think of just the number of guys who get drafted is just one of the parts, but let's say you have 35 rounds you're cutting and 30 guys per round. I'm not so good at math. Let's call that 900 or 1,000 guys. That's 9,000, that's 1,000 fans for life that you have. that are going to be baseball fans forever for your sport, for your team. So you're creating kind of the next wave, the next generation of fans.
And then you mentioned how that expands out, right?
And then you expand out, right? So it's not just the players themselves, but it's the players' family, and then they go to high school, whatever high school they're at. Oh, I'm friends with this person who got drafted by the Mets. Now that extended group of people are all baseball fans. And you cut down 1,000 draftees, you're cutting down 1,000 of those pockets of people that will be baseball fans potentially. And baseball does this all the time. They do, like, they don't let you post on Twitter any highlights, right? They take it right down. Like, why not? That's the best part of a baseball game is 3+ hours long. They're trying to shorten the game. People are clipping highlights. They're trying to put them on Twitter to generate interest, to get clicks, to get people watching baseball. And MLB goes and takes them all down. You can't see our highlights. It doesn't make sense, right? It's
the Trevor Bauer argument, right? He's
yeah, it's short-sighted, and you're trying to get younger fans, which baseball is struggling with right now, and chopping down the bottom layer of baseball and potentially new fans seems extremely short-sighted.
Yeah, they say the NBA just lets you could copy and share everything, and that's why they really blow up. Coop, one thing that I differ in opinion that what you said before was, if I'm selected, I don't care who I am, I'm not worried about Adrian Gonzalez because I am so far from him. But you hear it all the time. Like, kids do say that. How many guys do we know? They say, Jimmy Rollins was in the way. That's why I didn't make it. It's like, you got released an A-ball, though.
Yeah.
There was 12 guys ahead of you still. Jimmy Rollins had nothing to do with you not making it to the big leagues. That's why I just think it's a tough decision. But I like what you said, Coop, about I know when I was with the Indians and we were on the East Coast, I saw my family all the time. They were in the Eastern League. Playing in the Eastern League was awesome for me. It was so cool being that close to people.
It's great. I was always on the West Coast, so I was on 3 hours. I had talked to my family maybe after batting practice, and then by the time the game's over, it's 1 o'clock on the East Coast.
Right.
So you don't get to talk to anyone, after games, which kind of helps you decompress a little bit. So it would be nice to have some friends and family to shoot the stuff with.
Hey, Coop. I think most of us played in the California League here too. It's just to touch on the California League. It was awesome when you went 0 for 4, being able to decompress.
You never had to worry about talking to anybody, yeah.
Right. But then that one day where you go 3 for 4 and you want to call all your friends, they're all sleeping.
You wait till the next day.
Yeah.
Hey, Iapoce brought up that today. He said that he really sympathizes with the guys because if they're 0 for 4, it's everybody knows, everybody's talking to you, everybody's talking about it on Twitter and your Instagram. And he goes, if you have a good game, it's pretty cool because you can kind of smell yourself a little bit. You see his face all over the place. But he said the guys have it coming from all directions all the time, especially when they're struggling. Where I had to call collect after every game. Literally, we didn't have cell phones my first year, so it's unbelievable.
But that was the funny thing when you're on the bus on the way back from a game and you get a call from one of your buddies in the organization that you haven't heard from in a while. You're like, you must have went 3 for 4 tonight.
You just got to tell somebody.
Yeah. You're like, this freaking guy. Yeah.
Yeah, but guys, when you went 3 for 4, I remember scouring the internet just to look at the box score.
Yeah.
Right? It's just to see it. It was really rewarding. Thank God. What's my average? I got 3 more doubles. Let me look at my double total. It's such a sick game. It's
stuff that gets you through 44 games in the minor leagues and 162 in the big leagues. It's crazy.
Yeah.
You ain't lying. You ain't lying.
It's the worst game ever. It really is.
That'd be crazy. That's for sure.
Hey, Mike Spitz, here's a question for you. And I don't know if you have an opinion on this or not. We talked about the short-sightedness of the MLB. If this is a money-saving opportunity, if that's the end game here, what are some, in your opinion, some brighter ways for them to reduce their costs in a more meaningful way that doesn't impact this draft?
All right.
That's a
Let's
tough question.
brainstorm here for a second. So, I don't know that the owners really need to cut costs right now. So revenues have been up for the last however many years, 10 years, let's say. 3 years ago, they sold some technology to Disney for $1.5 billion. So every team got a check for $50 million. They're cutting 40 or 50 minor league teams right now. So those are cost savings and revenue generators. So the owners have been swimming in it for a decade, right? They've had it pretty good. Plus, if you talk about publicly funded stadiums, right, the public is on the hook for a lot of these stadiums. The owners are getting free money from the fans, essentially, paying these taxes. So owners are in a pretty good spot. I don't really feel so bad for them that I'm looking for ways to save them money. And I don't think that they need money saved right now. So saving $1 million is, I guess it sounds nice to me because I don't have $1 million to spend, but for them, I think it's a joke. But I always look at these things from the Mets perspective because I'm a Mets fan. And you want to save some money, don't sign Jed Lowry for 2 years and $20 million. And you just saved yourself, $10 million a year, right? That's just a bad signing. Even if you sign him to a 2-year deal for $18 million. I don't know, that could be one way.
Operate your general managerial skills better, right?
Yeah, operate a little bit more efficiently and don't give out 2-year $20 million deals to a 38-year-old who wears double ear flap helmets.
That's good.
I like Jed Lowry, but not for $10 million a year. But I don't know, if I'm trying to save money, I would try to look for ways to generate more money as opposed to saving money. So try to make the draft more exciting. Look at what football did, right? Football, the draft was the most watched show on TV since this whole thing started.
So,
right?
but in
like
fairness, they were going to
draft.
do that this year, weren't they? In fairness to the MLB, they were going to try and do that this year by having the draft during the in Omaha, right? At Omaha, yeah.
In Omaha, that would have been cool.
Yeah.
That's a cool idea.
But I see what you're saying. Though, stuff, be more innovative, right? Do things that are more appealing. Sure.
The hardest part about baseball is for the draft. Like you've never heard of half of the kids in high school. Like high school, college kids. Even if they're top college kids, the average American hasn't seen them play, even on TV.
Right.
Yeah. Even for us.
And it's hard to sell the draft. Yeah, it's hard to sell the draft because these guys are at least 3 years away from the big leagues, and it's hard to get into that. But I think the one good thing that baseball is doing right now is they're expanding the postseason. So they're cutting down the regular season a little bit. You want to sell some TV rights, sell some advertising, whatever. I think they're going from 10 to 14 teams this year. I think that's a cool idea. Like, people are going to be watching that. And that's an easy way to generate some more money. I don't like it long-term necessarily, but short-term, I think it's a pretty good idea. And I'm sure those TV rights are going to go for a good amount of money. Let me think here.
I can't wrap my head around like a playoff game with no fans. Like, I just can't.
Like spring training.
Yeah. Brutal, right?
I really feel like that's almost like more than half of the draw of watching a sporting event, especially in the playoffs, is hearing that.
Right, that intensity, the vibration,
Now, what do you guys think of this though? Like the players today, they said, the owners want to do a split of let's see what we bring in this year, and then we'll divide it up accordingly. Players said absolutely not. Don't you think from a player's standpoint, like if you feel like, all right, the owners aren't going to make money, but you still have to pay me my full salary, isn't that? Where are they coming from with that?
Well, the counterpoint is they sell another TV deal, it brings in $6 billion, and they don't get a raise, right? So, at least not if you're on a long-term deal, you're not seeing that money. So if things go the other way, now you're supposed to take a hit because the owners don't want to pay a little bit more. I can see their side.
I mean, there's no salary cap though. I mean, they are free to sign for whatever they want.
There is a luxury tax, though, it just kind of operates like a salary cap.
Yeah, but that allows all like the small markets to still get paid, even though the Marlins are going to give a kid $100,000 in the first round this year. They still get the $50 million kickback.
I'd be curious what would happen if they let teams trade draft picks. Because I think some teams are probably upset that they can't spend money, especially the smaller market teams, spend money on the draft. you know, it's a good way to get relatively cheap talent into your organization. And who knows, maybe the Marlins are looking to spend more money on the draft. They'd rather spend an extra $5 million. Maybe they could trade major league talent for a high draft pick. I don't know if that's the answer, but I think it's something that baseball should at least consider.
Yeah, I want, and you know, the other thing that hasn't really been discussed is the international signings, right? That hasn't really been brought up in this whole process either. So there's a lot of money thrown around in the international signings that goes to waste as well.
But like, look at the Orioles have to take. They got the first pick this year, right? They got to spend 8.4. Now, you know, we all know from experience that the Nationals, who won the World Series, well, that's a bad example because this is last year's. But let's say whoever has the 17th pick, they have to spend 3.6. So it's $5 million saving, and neither of my guys are going to make it to the big leagues based on history, right? So I'm the Marlins. I have no money. I have to give $5 million for the same player that the Yankees are going to get at number 20, potentially. I mean, because we know there's horror stories out there. We went over to our last time we spoke about this with the Padres and Chris. Chris had 7 guys in the top 2 rounds, and 1 guy was like an awful big leaguer, and the other 6 didn't make it. So
it was $13 million down the drain if you did the slot money.
If you did the slot money this year, it was $13 million purchase and bonuses, and nobody impacted the big league team.
I could, if I went through my Kansas City draft, that would probably be similar too.
But that's where, and this is the debate, I guess, you know, Spitz was alluding to before about where we sit on the, you know, opposite ends of the aisle here. I just don't think the draft itself I don't think it's a good business practice. You know what I mean? But hey, when you talk about all the money that MLB is making and you factor that in, I guess, you know, when $8 million maybe is a teardrop in the bucket for them, you know. But if I was in that position and I was a little more educated and maybe a little more involved, I'd be trying to find more creative ways to sign guys at a discounted rate.
So would you propose have a 20-round draft and just let the team, don't have slot money, let the teams decide?
No, I said something. I mean, this is probably, I don't know how bold this is, but it's totally not feasible because there's too much history already. But I think you're getting an opportunity, period. And here's my biggest, I guess, and this is maybe the saltiness of being a minor leaguer that was playing on teams with guys who got a lot of money, right? You know, what's the default when a guy signs for the big bonus? He plays, period. Conversation's over. There's nothing to be discussed. There's a free agent signing. Maybe tit for tat. He's right around, you know, his skill set, you know, maybe a little shorter on the tools, but probably gets it done better on an everyday basis. But guess what? We're not interested in you. We didn't put any money in you. We didn't invest in you. But now if you take away the financial investment into that one individual, right, and you just give a blanket signing bonus to whatever how many players you want to expand it out to, all of a sudden your interests now lie in just the best player, not the guy that got the money and that you thought was the best player. Like and again, this is just one example with the Padres, and I know you speaking on your experience with the Royals, but watching 6 or 7 guys get $13 million and not make the major leagues or help my major league team, and in theory, I also think this: if you're taking in the first round, being the 25th guy or the 26th man on the roster doesn't cut it. That's not what you were drafted for. Anybody can be that in the minor leagues. There's a ton of guys in the minor leagues who could be a 25th to 26th man guy in the roster, right? You're signed at that position in the draft, and you're given XYZ money. You're supposed to impact that team, and I'm not saying you're supposed to be an all-star, but you got to impact that team on a long-term basis, or whatever club you end up with, right? Or however, you know, if you get dealt away, you know, something you have to be materially meaningful to that organization. But I just, again, I think you now don't have to force feed some of these guys, and I get it. You know, the argument, you know, that Mike said, these guys are talented. Yeah, they're talented. There's other guys that are talented that don't get coveted right away. Guys develop at different paces and speeds, right? And guys over time, you know, eclipse others. But if you don't give a kid an opportunity to get the same amount of at bats, right, or equal amount of it's not a meritocracy, right? It's not. We like to think it is, but it's not a true meritocracy, right? And I'm not saying, look, an opportunity is an opportunity, and I speak to that as a coach. Whatever opportunity you get, it's your job to expand it. But when there's money involved, right? They're not going to let you pry that open too easily. You got to really, really, really be good, right? We had Luis Lopez on here, right, Jim?
Yep.
I mean, the guy had to essentially pay his own way to get into professional baseball, and he was a 3-time league MVP at every level he played, and he had to, wait and wait and wait. I mean, if they would have invested money in him at some point, or maybe there wasn't anybody that they invested money ahead of him, maybe that's not the case. I just think it's not a true meritocracy. I think it's ridiculous to give a guy $8 million in the first round if he ain't going to be an all-star in my club. Like,
What are you proposing? So what are you proposing?
A flat signing bonus.
So no matter what round.
No rounds. Just go sign your guys.
So no draft.
No draft. Just go sign your guys. There was no draft prior to the 60s. When did the draft get implemented? Whenever, they operated under that pretense prior, right?
Yeah.
Now let's scout. Now let's see how good you are scouting, right? Let's talk about that aspect as well. So go scout, go develop, let the guys play against each other, which they're really doing. You're on a club, but you're really playing against each other, right? That's the truth of the whole process. So make it fair for everybody. You want to see who's going to be the guy? Make it fair for everybody. Don't give that guy $8 million and let him clog up a bunch of other guys.
You're going to get a taste of it this year with the new.
I hope so. I hope you're right.
But you're going to see, it's going to be interesting to see if any teams have trouble signing guys, right? If there's a team that is getting 5 to 10 guys signed and then the Yankees or somebody has 45, right? Like it'll be interesting to see where teams struggle to sign these free agents, for their $20,000 cap.
Hey, Gaff, are they going to over-recruit, right? Like the Yankees might go, yeah, I'll take you. Then I'm going to just get rid of you.
But I just don't understand how and Mike, you might have a better idea, the minor league systems, like if when I was with Kansas City, there was a point where they had an Arizona League team, an Appalachian team, a Pioneer League team,
Dominican Summer League team.
So there was like 4 or 5 stops before a full season.
Right.
Right. So now I think your organization obviously depends on the organization depending on what they do, but if they're going to be slashing all these minor league teams, and I know they're talking about doing for lack of a better term, like an extended spring training focused on development and technology for the younger guys at their spring training sites. But I think, and maybe I'm just not educated enough, but I don't know how they could go about, I don't know what your plan of attack is with that being an uncertainty. If it was 5 more years of the minor league systems that we all know, then yeah, I would do, Chris, exactly what you said, or Jimmy did, let's just bring them all together, like get as many guys as we can and maybe hope one sticks. But maybe like the small market teams, like, hey, who take pride in scouting, we're going to go hard at these guys and try to get them in the system. And maybe sell them at, hey, we're only bringing in the similar recruitment. Hey, we're only bringing in 40 guys, not like organization XYZ that they're bringing in 90, like there's a gamesmanship to that as well.
That's a great point. It becomes an interesting dynamic. But you know what? It's not too far long ago that this was in place. And it wasn't here in the States. It wasn't until like the international signing bonuses got out of control that this is what they were doing. They were signing international players at $1,000 a clip, bringing them in, and the ones who stuck. The rest of you, see you later. Now, I'm not saying just give $1,000, but I'm just saying, if you do that, I think if you take that approach, you'll find yourself in a better situation, one fiscally and just from a talent standpoint, just from guys actually, contributing at a better value.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to take a little bit of the other side of your argument, Chris, here.
I bet you do.
Yeah, I see a couple good points in there, but baseball's about winning, right? Like you can't just it's merit based in that it's very easy to measure wins and losses, right? Like the more you win, the better you've done and the more World Series you've won, the longer the contract extension you'll get. Like, if you win, you keep your job. Let's say from a general manager's perspective, right? If you keep winning, you're going to keep your job.
Mm-hmm.
And if you give the opportunity to the guys who are successful, right, you're going to win more. So to a degree, I maybe I'm rambling here a little bit, but if you go, I take your point at the lower levels, right? Giving the opportunity to the guy that you've invested a lot of money in, even if he bats 200 or something, you're going to give him the next shot or promote him over a guy who's hitting 340 but was undrafted. But once you get to the major league level, it feels like you just be hurting yourself, giving the guy who's underperforming a job for longer than you need to, just because you've invested so much money in it. So I can see guys getting tripped up in rookie ball and A ball, even in Double A. But once you get past that, you got to win games, or people are going to get fired.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that I get that position, and I certainly understand. Why would you give the guy the opportunity if he's not worthy, right? That's what you're essentially saying, right? Because your job is on the line, or the success of your major league club is on the line. But I think it's fair to say the people who make decisions aren't necessarily the brightest. We like to think they are. Or I don't. Just there's a 40-man roster. Why is it those 40 guys? Think about that. It's not always the best guy doesn't always get on the roster.
A lot of service time games. You see every May, June, July. You get guys that are purposely kept in the minor leagues to make them to avoid being Super 2s and save them one year before arbitration. For the free agency.
To me, that's the more broken part of the system than the draft is. It's the manipulation of service time. It's you make league minimum for the first 3 years in the league before you see real money. You have to be in the big leagues for 3 years.
And that's a great point. I don't think anybody can argue that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When you guys are talking, I know we can all attest to when we played. When you have that draft pick hanging over your head, like when you're the first round pick or you're the 30th round pick, there's like a little bit of a caste system, and those first rounders or the second rounders, they have a little way about them. They kind of, even on your own team, kind of look down upon you. I'm curious this year, what happens when you have the kid that thought he was going in the 6th round and then the kid who didn't know he was getting drafted, right? So they both signed for $20,000. You're going to have those conversations from these idiots. Like, we know how many idiots there are out there. It's like, well, dude, yeah, I was going to be the 7th rounder. And you're lucky you were, you were going to probably be a free agent sign. That's going to go on because you know how people spoke, right, in that locker room. And to me, there was a lot of first-round picks that you have one conversation and they spoke like that. You were like, and their license plate said, like, flamethrower. Like this guy's not going to make it.
They had the tattoo, right, Cooper? They all had tattoos, didn't they?
Yeah.
A lot of tattoos, yes.
Yeah, they had the huge truck with the monster wheels, and they tell you how good they are, and the catchers can't catch their splitty. And
And Jimmy, you're being generous. You're saying the guy who thought he was going to be the 6th rounder. Usually the 6th rounder thinks he's going to be a 2nd rounder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like all of us, I was a 13th rounder. I think I should have been an 8th rounder.
Right.
So those guys are now going from, like you said, a 6th round pick to an undrafted free agent.
And he's going to want to like put his chest up, like I'm not the same as you. I was going to be.
Yeah.
I'm a victim of the COVID.
Oh yeah, this generation of baseball players 30 years from now, when they're back home after 3 years in the minor leagues, like, if it wasn't for COVID, man,
I would have been a big leaguer.
Yeah, but you just found the next that's going to be like the same as being semi-pro. Yeah.
I think Chris said it last time. What if you don't even make it to your first full season? You get cut next spring, right? They don't have a minor league season this year.
Right.
And then they cut you short season. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Buddy. I don't have a place for you. Oh, man.
So
listen, I think we covered a lot of scenarios.
we sure did.
We'll look back on this in a month from now and see. There's got to be some stuff we missed. It's going to be pretty fun to kind of check it out.
The one thing we didn't talk about when we introduced these guys is the Long Island ties that they have. You got 2 Chaminade Flyers here, and then you got
I don't like Chaminade.
What's Kellenberg again? I don't even know what to call
Come on.
The
Firebirds.
Firebirds. Worst
Firebirds.
logo in sports, I think. I don't even know what that logo is.
The Phoenix, man. Come on.
Yeah.
One heart, one mind over here. That's the
Bro.
motto.
What?
What was that on your finger? I just
Oh, I bust this out whenever we get a special guest in. I only bring it out when we have a special guest.
that's messed up, man.
I like it.
Whenever Mike's in,
What is
whenever Mike's in town, Mike Gaffney's in town. I gotta,
Well,
Gotta
he's
grace-
gonna be on here a little. I think that's getting old, all right? We gotta put that ring away.
Well, I mean, we're the only team you guys gonna beat, so I don't care.
That's okay. You can keep that. That's cute. Well, listen, guys, we will definitely talk about an easier subject one day with all you guys. I think, this show's obviously going to just blow up and there's going to be about 300, 400 episodes. We'll have you guys all on again and we'll talk about better things. But I appreciate you guys digging deep for some thoughts today. And it was good having an insider here with Mikey. So, you did great. So
Great job, guys. Pleasure having you on, and obviously, like Jim said, we'll definitely circle back up again.